As a result of the rumble in Berdyansk, the Russians suffered losses: 9 invaders, an enemy Tiger, and 2 pickup trucks, the main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense reported on Monday, showing a video. According to the GUR, on November 19, 2025, Russian invaders gathered at the entrance to temporarily occupied Berdyansk in Zaporizhia under a propaganda billboard. Their unhurried conversation was interrupted by a powerful explosion. As a result of a successful operation by the main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine and the resistance movement to the Russian occupation, the Muscovites suffered losses among personnel and equipment. 5 invaders from the so-called Rosgvardia were destroyed, another 4 were seriously wounded, 2 enemy pickup trucks and a Tiger armored vehicle were damaged, reported the GUR. As the intelligence agency noted, the rumble in Berdyansk caused a commotion. Ambulances and fire trucks were brought to the site of the destruction of the Russian occupiers. The roar in Berdyansk caused a stir. Ambulances and fire trucks rushed to the scene of the destruction of the Russian occupiers, the statement said. The GUR noted that every war crime against Ukraine has consequences and reminded the Russian invaders of the inevitability of retribution. As a reminder, on November 29, 2 explosions were also heard in the temporarily occupied Berdyansk district of the Zaporizhia region. Ukrainian intelligence officers eliminated Kadirovites who had organized an illegal business involving stolen fuel. Earlier, the main intelligence directorate confirmed that the organizer of the torture chamber in Berdyansk had been eliminated. A Ford Kuga belonging to Yevgeny Alexandrovich Ananyevsky exploded in the city. Also in Berdyansk, traitor Mikhail Gritsai, who tortured Ukrainian prisoners and appropriated state property, was shot dead. According to intelligence, he was the so-called deputy mayor for infrastructure, housing and communal services, and fuel and energy complex of the occupation administration.
In Kupiansk, Kharkiv region, the Ukrainian armed forces continue both defensive operations and search and strike actions aimed at locating Russian invaders who managed to infiltrate through Ukrainian defensive lines. Ukrainian forces are defending their positions and hunting down sabotage groups in the northeastern city of Kupiansk, despite Moscow's statements that its troops are fully in control of it. The scale of lies from the Russian leadership about the situation in Kupiansk is astonishing. The truth is that in the days following their claims, fewer than 40 Russian radio communication subscribers were detected in the city. On the approaches to Kupiansk, our units are holding designated defensive lines and increasing fire pressure on the enemy to block their supply routes. Commander-in-Chief of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, Oleksandr Syrsky, said, Russian forces tried to break into Kupiansk and fully secure it to achieve the Kremlin's political objective. Unexpectedly for Russians, the Ukrainians are now the ones pushing to slice the Russian grouping in half and encircle them in the city instead. Brutal urban fighting in Kupiansk is going on day and night, from street to street, as the Russians are storming the city. Heavy bombardments light up the night, as Russians try desperately to dislodge Ukrainian defenders. Euromaidan press media outlet says. Sergei Kuzovlev, commander of the Western Troop Grouping, recently informed Putin that Russian forces had completed the liberation of Kupiansk after months of intense fighting. However, in reality, this is merely the extent of their infiltration tactics, as their actual area of control is much narrower and more unstable, as only small Russian infantry pockets are operating in the city. This indicates that their consolidated territorial gains amount to roughly 30% of the town, with the area west of the Oskil River remaining a large grey zone, due to continuous engagements between Russian infiltrators and Ukrainian defenders. Russian disadvantages in Kupiansk are twofold. Firstly, logistics are difficult to maintain because supplies need to be transported over the Oskil River, while Ukrainian drones are constantly surveying the crossings, Euromaidan press says. Secondly, after Russia established a bridgehead on the right bank of the river, they advanced too narrowly into Kupiansk, with only small infiltration groups and too few reserves, making their gains unstable. As a result, Russian forces have exhausted their forward momentum and, over the past 2 months, have managed only to consolidate their hold on a small number of newly captured streets. In order to mitigate the risk of Kupiansk being fully seized and Ukrainian forces east of the Oskil River becoming isolated, the Ukrainian command has established the Joint Forces Group under the leadership of Major General Mikhailo Drapati. In the ranks of this new corps, Ukraine has its most combat-ready and motivated fighters, whose task is to clear the city. Despite Russian announcements, most of the city remains in the grey zone, as Russians are unable to bring in a sufficient number of forces and consolidate their gains. Euromaidan Press reports Ukraine will not halt its counter-offensive operations because the strategic value of Kupiansk is great and the loss of the city would pose a threat to the defenders east of the river. Russia seized Kupiansk in the first weeks of the 2022 invasion, but Ukrainian troops recaptured it later that year. In Sumy Oblast, soldiers from the 71st Separate Jaeger Brigade of the airborne assault troops of the Ukrainian Armed Forces are holding back the enemy using ground-based robotic systems. Their arsenal includes Ukrainian-made logistics and engineering GRS. They use them to deliver cargo and supplies, evacuate the wounded, lay mines, and perform a variety of other tasks. This helps protect the lives of Ukrainian soldiers. A Freedom television crew witnessed the work of these airborne engineers in the frontline areas of Sumy Oblast. Ground-based engineering robotic systems are used to construct Gaza barbed wire barriers and minefields. Furthermore, combat engineers from the 71st Airborne Assault Brigade frequently use ground drones for reconnaissance, inspection of hazardous sites, and mine clearance. Enemy drones armed with explosives that crash and fail to explode pose a threat not only to military personnel but also to civilians. We are working to ensure security on military transport routes as well as in fields where civilian combine harvesters and tractors are operating, says a combat engineer with the 71st Separate Specialized Brigade, call sign Saint S. The man has been in the army for over 10 years, since 2014. In the Sumy region, paratroopers from his brigade have been holding off Russian occupiers for over 6 months. Where the DSHV is, the line of contact is quite strong and reliably protected, notes Saint S. A soldier with the call sign Absinthe demonstrates the testing of the ground robot Volya E, which is preparing to move into combat positions. This is a versatile platform that allows us to transport cargo. It has a payload capacity of 150 kilograms. This allows us to load ammunition, food, and deliver essential supplies to our soldiers. He comments, another Zamay-class rocket launcher, in turn, can deliver up to 600 kilograms of cargo. It is also used to evacuate wounded soldiers from their positions. War has changed. It's become more technologically advanced. Precision and technological advancement are decisive on the battlefield, Absinthe emphasizes. Moreover, ground-based robotic systems help not only evacuate the wounded, but also save lives. For example, on its way to its position, the ground platform encountered a Russian so-called waiting drone powered by fiber optics. The Russian army uses these drones to set traps along logistics routes. Such drones can lie in wait for a target for several hours and then attack once they lock onto it. Considering that a vehicle from an adjacent unit was following the ground platform, the operator of the ground platform decided to destroy the Russian FPV by simply running it over. Drones sometimes not only lay mines, but also act as, so to speak, kamikaze drones. To save the lives of our soldiers, explains the platoon commander of the NRK, physicist. According to the Ukrainian General Staff, Russian forces are shelling the Sumy region more than 100 times a day, but the Russian occupiers' advance has been halted. Ukrainian defense forces are inflicting significant losses on Russian troops in this area.